Sonic and cities are a perfect combination. It's always fun to see the blue blur sprint his way through the streets and make them his own, causing God knows how much property damage along the way. But what also strikes me is just how diverse their designs are. There are rustic cities, futuristic cities, theme park cities. It appeals to me because I'm a bit of a city lover myself, and one thing that has helped give us folks a world tour of sorts is the Sonic series. Over the course of the next 2 or 3 videos, I'll be exploring the cities of Sonic, figuratively, not literally, and we'll be giving them a little look. I might not cover every single one, I'm generally going for the main ones, but there may be a little curveball thrown in every so often. I won't be covering any of Eggman's bases in the series, despite how city-like they may be, because ultimately they serve a different purpose. I feel like that's a separate topic on its own, really. So if you fancy just hearing me yap about the cities of Sonic, well, you've come to the right place. In this episode, as the title tells you, I'll be covering the cities seen in the classic Sonic games, so Sonic 1, 2, 3, CD, and Mania, maybe something else. So, let's get straight into it. First, let's start off with the original zone that let us play as Sonic in an urban environment, the ever-bouncy Spring Yard Zone in 1991's Sonic the Hedgehog. Spring Yard Zone is the 3rd zone in the first game and is the earliest attempt of Sonic Team to depict a more urbanized environment with a little bit of abstract design here, a little bit of technical constraints there, but it was a marked difference to the first 2 stages, Green Hill and Marble, which were more natural or historical. Spring Yard Zone is man-made through its foreground of natural elements in its background, and set the stage for what was effectively going to be the start of Sonic's long relationship with cities. Visually, the stage has this beautifully tinted purple sky as the game's time progresses into the evening, and the background is filled with these silhouetted buildings, all with a little bit of light shining through the windows, showing signs of life in the city, and a greater scope metropolis behind it. It's probably quite grand. That ain't all in the background though. These buildings are sandwiched between a huge forest park and a cluster of mountains. Sure, they are simple in terms of design, but it still gives a strong sense of depth to the area all the same. So when we come to the foreground, yeah, this stuff is lunacy compared to the more realistic scene in the background. In terms of its overall layout, Spring Yard is a slower stage, much like the Marble Zone, and really requires careful precision moving if you're going for that elusive perfect run. The foreground architecture is filled with moving platforms. It somehow also gives off the energy of an 80s shopping mall. Don't ask me for any workings, it just gives off those vibes. It's not really going for any kind of realism, but at the same time it doesn't feel like an egregious stretch away from realism. Hell of a lot of springs though. If you're a fan of that sort of thing, then you're probably laughing. I mean, what do you expect in somewhere called Spring Yard Zone, duh? That's more of a note to myself to stop writing stupid crap. Anyway, as much as it is definitely a city, it is also an urban obstacle course. Much more so than if you compare it to one of its successors, Starlight Zone, which we shall get to shortly. Special mention to my favourite bit in the stage, which simply has the word COPE in glowing letters. It's like, wow, they fully anticipated first-time players to struggle with this, and they simply chose everyone to get good. Lord have mercy, I tried. Trust me, I tried. There is definitely a strange charm to Spring Yard Zone. When I was younger, I always dreaded coming back here when I played through Sonic 1, but it's actually pretty decent when you acclimatise yourself to what the stage wants from you, and that is to lock in and have some restraint when dealing with the puzzles it presents you with. The bumpers and springs give it more of a carnival feel when paired with the city visuals, and we both know this won't be the only time that Sonic will be dealing with this archetype, and I love that it just seems to have this mischievous personality in its own way. Spring Yard Zone may not offer the grand excitement or speed of later city stages, but it's a very foundational one, and I think that should be respected in its own right. It plants the seeds of Sonic's relationship with cities as playgrounds for speed, thrashing robots, and just plain pissing around to his heart's content. Starlight Zone. This zone was very much a reprieve zone in Sonic 1, being sandwiched between the challenging hellhole that is Labyrinth Zone and the soul-crushingly industrial Scrapbrain Zone. It is a somewhat pretty zone aesthetically, taking place in the middle of a large construction site in the middle of a city, with stars twinkling in the night sky, with the giant green highways taking up the bulk of your view. I mean, it's very simplistic, but I adore seeing the city lights in the background the lower down the stage you are, the way they blend into the darkness with the various blue hues. It's quite lovely. And as you grow nearer to the depths, you are flat out right outside people's apartments or offices, and I think that it's just a neat little bit of world building for the debut game. It has quite a minimalist edge to it, with very little bells and whistles. It really is a highway in construction, but it is still an absolute blast to play through. The design philosophy is actually much fairer this time round, and is a very quick stage too, much more in the vein of Green Hill. Sonic 1 in general was an incredibly diverse game in terms of its landscapes, and going from a fairly oppressive city zone in Springyard to an actual hellhole in Labyrinth back to a fairly peaceful city was a welcome change. I would actually wager that it's probably the most realistic of all of Sonic 1's locations compared to how stylized everywhere else is. Starlight Zone is serene, and the music reflects that with its upbeat, peaceful and joyful rhythm that gets stuck in your head, with that city telling a story within itself. That this too is part of Sonic's world, that it's not all just fantasy locales, but there is an element of realism to it also. Much like Springyard, but this one feels so much more elegant. Albeit in some kind of urban industrial dream highway sort of way. I mean, it's still full of impractical platforms and sweeping curves, which makes you wonder just what the hell they are even building. Not to mention, those wretched fans will consistently get in your way when trying to hit your stride with Sonic speed, but that's not necessarily a complaint. That's a function of the stage, and it's our job to overcome it. It's also very impressive that a single fan can push Sonic back. Let's see them try that with modern Sonic and a full boost gauge. Obviously, it's also one of the fastest Sonic 1 zones. I mean, Sonic 1 is pretty infamous at this point for being marketed on its speed, despite only really having 2 zones that allow you to really go fast by design. Although, in fairness, skilled players can make any zone fast. But as I mentioned before, it is an excellent breather stage for players to unwind in, provided you don't fall too prey to the fans and the bottomless pits elsewhere. It plays simple, it looks simple, it is simple, and I love it for that. Moving on now to Sonic CD. This game very much takes the archetypes laid by Sonic 1 and expands upon them considerably thanks to the higher power of the Sega CD, and the counterpart to Starlight is no exception. Stardust Speedway, a part of Little Planet, is easily the most famous CD zone and one of the best known Sonic zones in general for one sole reason. Metal Sonic. Yes, Sonic's first big race against Metal Sonic takes place right here, and is probably seen as the most memorable thing about it. However, I'm going to be talking about the stage itself. Sorry Metal, you're going to have to take a bit of a back seat this time. Stardust Speedway is a beautifully designed stage, and I can't help but feel with its multi-layering that it's taking cues from, say, Neo Tokyo in the legendary manga and anime film Akira with its multiple tones and kinetic lighting. Stardust Speedway also has actually got many aesthetics in one thanks to the game's time travel system. It's split into past, present, good future and bad future, and we'll go through them one by one. In the past, the zone is gorgeous. It has been said that it is very Greco-Roman inspired, and I have to agree. There's all sorts of elements like the greenery and the vines which give off this classical sense to it. It all feels natural. In the foreground we have plant life growing on the roads, and they're filled with occasional vines which have spread. You can really feel that nature's really been given a chance to grow here. There's a balance between the man-made side and the natural side that allows them to coexist with each other. Mainly because the tech is kept to a minimum outside of the necessary gameplay elements thanks to the time period. The buildings are beautiful, giving off vibes of an acropolis, and the little lights in the backgrounds like stars or mini fires just give it that much more texture, and it's so pretty. The overall lighting of the stage gives it this eerie yet peaceful feel, much like Starlight Zone. The green very much helps. The basis of this incarnation of the zone makes up Sonic Mania's Stardust Speedway Act 1, where it retains all these elements and is very respectful to the original version of the zone. Moving on to the present day Stardust Speedway, and my god, it is so pretty. It has this real retro-futuristic edge to it. I really love the aesthetic. The speedways are paved in gold, with these horns everywhere. It makes it seem so luxurious. The background is so cluttered. There is so much going on between the multiple colours and lights, like there is a whole bustling city going on, with the purple lights and the purple buildings in the background. The way it's all framed feels like you're making Sonic a run through a neon paradise or a neon hellhole. It feels like Starlight has been spruced up tenfold and taken to its most glamorous, exuberant extreme. All things natural seem to have been eliminated and replaced by technology en masse, and there is a hell of a lot of light pollution. I mean, the stage is screaming. So when we get to the good future, it was a surprise for me to see that what some might say would be garish is now vastly toned down. The whole city is tinted green once more, throwing back to how it looked in the past, but the types of buildings are more interesting, as it seems to have Ferris wheels, roller coasters, casinos. It genuinely feels like it's been transformed into Sonic's version of how Las Vegas could be, with a beautiful isolated little city far in the background. And we can see more stars in the good future. It's called the good future for a reason. With everything hanging in the balance, it becomes softer, lighter, calmer again, revisiting its roots from the past. So in direct contrast, as you'd expect, the bad future doubles down on the more negative aspects of the present and turns it into an oppressive nightmare. The light pollution is all over the place, clouds fill the sky, everywhere is tinted red and you can no longer see the stars. The background has the lights of Eggman's creations, and it is certainly haunting. The buildings down below are just repetitive industrial buildings. Contrast that to the good future cityscape and you can see that all the joy, all the whimsy has just been stripped away. This really does resemble some kind of technological hell, and it is fascinating to see the parallel development that this version of the stage has. So when you eventually race Metal Sonic in this, versus the good future, you really do feel how unpleasant Eggman's version of the world really is, something that would later be explored further in Eggman Land in Sonic Unleashed. I'd say on the whole, like with Sonic CD in general, Stardust Speedway is one of the few places where you can see a city's soul change depending on how you play the game. It's got this little bit of an environmental message looped in within it, more or less, somewhat, depending on your point of view, but it's just most fascinating to look at. Let's go gambling! Casino Night Zone, the fourth zone in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and when it comes to Sonic and its urban stages, this was quite a step forward into spectacle, bougie lighting, and oh good god, the colours. The colours are never ending. This one was obviously inspired by the real Las Vegas, more so than Stardust Speedway's good future as I said before. Much like Spring Yard before it, this is the entertainment zone of the game, the theme park-esque zone, one that lends itself into being more of a self-contained playground for fun and financial destitution. From the very start you are bombarded with the garish lights of the zone, as neon signs and lights drench the stage. Like they even have neon palm trees, man, it's so redundant, but they're just wasting energy for the love of the game. You can't ask them for any more than that. I hope that your favourite pastimes include pinball and slot machines, because they are here and they are a package deal. It will slow you down, but it will be compulsive playing. It's the definition of does what it says on the tin. Except when I lose rings on the slot machine, then the game needs to go and die. RNG can suck my... The background skyline is beautiful, showing off the glamorously shining blue buildings, like their visualization of nighttime Las Vegas, surrounded by the moving multicolour lights of what can only be presumed to be traffic, which continues to ground Sonic and add those little sprinkles of realism in such a fantasy-like environment. The whole zone feels absolutely alive with all the lights, sounds, movements, and that's what's important always when developing such a high-energy atmosphere. The foreground builds on this too, no expense is spared here, as every other platform and the underflooring seems to be coloured gold, to perhaps give the illusion of expense, despite how tacky some elements may come across. Let's not get it twisted, this isn't some high-class venue. It's a floating map of springs and machines being engineered to destroy Sonic, but only if it's suitably within the gambling theme though. We can't avoid that now. We're practically travelling for a giant arcade as it is. Casino Night's level design is all about having fun, but also delaying you and distracting you with the bumpers, the slot machines, the slight labyrinth it creates with the springs, until you finally reach Dr. Eggman's great big pinball showdown at the end, where even he has decorated his Eggo-matic with the most garish of lights and armor plating. It's just so stupid. I mean, it's probably the most over-designed the Eggmobile that's ever looked, and I don't know what he was thinking. Want realism? It's in the back with the rest of the traffic and little buildings. For now, it's time to cough up your spare change into the drink. Casino Night Zone overall builds on the foundations of what Spring Yard laid before it in terms of the entertainment theme zones, and took it to what some might call a logical extreme. It fills itself with mechanics and spectacle, and just adds that bit more to Sonic 2 in order to make it great. And within Sonic's world, something like it seems to fit perfectly. So now we go from a casino to a carnival. Different types of entertainment beginning with C that once again Sonic has taken under his wing. It's time to look at Carnival Night Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. There are similarities between the two stages aesthetically, but they're both very different when you get down to it. Visually, Carnival Night is striking. Once again, building on the foundations laid by Spring Yard and Casino Night, This zone is another super colourful and brightly lit entertainment complex, filled with barrels, tall towers, fans, water sections much to everyone's horror. And speaking of water, if you're wondering why I'm not covering Hydro City Hydrocity, that is because I do not consider it a city. It's more of a water complex, in the same vein as Labyrinth, Aquatic Ruin, or Lagoon City in Superstars. I may do a video on primarily water levels at some point though, so don't count it out just yet. Back to Carnival Night, it's certainly a fascinatingly designed level. Now, I don't know about you, but I once got defeated by the Barrel of Doom here. I know many people did, and trust me, it was as humbling as shit for me as it was for you probably. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who got it first try, well, whoop-de-doo, well done you! This zone draws a lot from real-life carnivals and amusement architecture, and filters it through the logic of good old-fashioned platforming level design, and it only works to its advantage. It goes further than Casino Night did. It really embraces its theme, it embraces the chaos, and I have to say the second act is perhaps one of the longest, if not the longest stage in the original trilogy. It's the only stage I've ever timed out on, it's that long. The neon lights once again are making a show of it as they are seen through nearly every part of the stage. The foreground designs are centered in more silver and red colours with a little bit of bright yellow here and there, never shying away from any decorative aspects, with these crafty little interior sections to hide things such as the giant rings. What surprised me a lot was the amount of speed you can get in this stage. You can rocket down those tubes, it's really surprising. The background once again is pretty interesting in itself. It's more layered this time around thanks to the passage of time and the tech developments between Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, as there are multiple complex buildings below the Carnival Zone. All sorts of mishmashed buildings and factory-like neon chimneys you can see on the first layer, then the layer beneath it there is a mysterious fog, followed by an even wider array of buildings such as these Ferris wheel type circular constructions and mysterious saucer-like sections that keep on repeating. Acid reuse? Never heard of her. Once again, it, much like Casino Night, doesn't behave like a city in the traditional sense. It is a metropolis, yes, but there doesn't seem to be much sign of life as there is technology and electricity. Unlike, say, Spring Yard and Starlight, where it's not exactly out of the vein of possibility that people may live around that area, it all seems a little surreal. It's a city made purely as an obstacle course to give Sonic a hard time. It also takes on a bit more of a ghostly atmosphere when the power is temporarily turned off, which does make it seem a bit more eerie to an extent. Ultimately, Carnival Night Zone stands as one of the most complex city zones in the classic era. It's certainly loud and overpowering at times, and sometimes outright confusing. But one thing I can definitely give it is that it definitely doesn't take it easy on you. And as I said earlier, it's easily one of the most memorable stages in the Sonic 3 side of the game because of how long it is. Fun times. Now for the next one. I know it's not 16-bit, but here's one of those curveballs I mentioned earlier. Forget Speed Highway and Station Square, this was Sonic's earliest 3D city, Radical City from Sonic R. It represents a unique and often overlooked part of Sonic's history. Sonic was finally making that jump from 2D to 3D, which was a very good move actually, and as part of that, Sonic R was born. A racing game that is held in low to moderate regard depending on who you ask. Personally, I think it's a charming product of its time, but it is a product of its time nonetheless. Radical City is a very odd beast. It feels like a residential area that has had government work done to it that no one really consented to, resulting in a giant eyesore of an incomplete highway that nobody drives on. It's no Radical Highway by any stretch. And a massive pinball grid in the middle that nobody plays with, except when Sonic and his friends decide to race on it. I mean, the landscape is honestly fairly pretty. It's surrounded by a lot of big hills and mountains in the distance, and there's a neighbouring few buildings across the way as well, decorated in the way that implies a fiesta is imminent. And if you play it in the rain, you'll get some nice rainbows. But this... it does seem like the more colourful aspects of the road shouldn't even be there in the first place. It's an unnatural combination, and maybe as a bit of world building that's actually pretty fire. There's a fair few hidden pathways in which you can use to have shortcuts depending on your ring count, and get a couple of Chaos Emeralds on the way too. The level design itself is suitably twisty and turny, which can be a very tricky thing to manage due to R's controls, but if you can get to grips with them, it can be fun. I will say though, that the lighting conditions really don't do it justice, but I can appreciate the constant splashes of colour throughout. Sonic Team would come a long way between now and developing Sonic Adventure, and it really shows. But at the same time, Sonic R in general is not something we should look at too negatively, because I do quite like the vibe it was going for. Ah yes, I've been looking forward to this one. The classic Sonic revival in 2017 was one of the greatest moments of the year for me. Sonic Mania was an outstanding sequel and a wonderful tribute to and remix of the original classic Sonic games. I believe that it was the only Sonic game released that year too, and for that to be the 4th installment of the classic series as well. I mean technically 5th if you include Sonic CD, but what a great year that was. With the vast majority of zones in Sonic Mania being tribute remakes, the game only had 4 original zones, so the pressure is well and truly on for Studiopolis and its peers to really prove themselves as worthy successors to the classic zones. And frankly, it more than delivered. Studiopolis is probably one of the most unique stages in the entire series. Honestly, it brought together such an incredibly stylized combination of a Hollywood studio merged with retro-futuristic downtown kind of vibes that also triples as a parkour fun zone. It's so creatively executed that I adore the hell out of it. Visually, Studiopolis carries with it the glitz of the language of stereotypical American filmmaking. There are loop-de-loops made out of clapperboards, you can teleport through satellites, and you can burst out of a TV set. The level design is so good and creative in this game, it is unreal. I adore the gimmicks and how Christian Whitehead and his team incorporated them into the zone. For Act 1, the background itself is beautifully done once again. We see the Egg TV skyscrapers staring at us in the face as we go through the stage. And they're part of a multi-layered background, which has more going on the lower you go. Behind the skyscrapers is a whole line of various buildings, whether they be apartment complexes or office buildings once more. And then, if you end up on the lower levels, you can see the various cool elements like glowing windmills, a metro system, more lit up buildings, billboards. There is just so much put into it that it just helps this area feel alive. And speaking of alive, the lighting is glorious. It has this sunset lighting to it with an orange sky glowing with the ferocity of a pissed off sun. A glorious colour palette. And the eggnog signs! I have never tried eggnog. I wonder if I'd like it. For Act 2, we fully go into a whole television studio-esque set, with screens all round with Eggman's face all over them, while Sonic makes his way around an area dominated by subwoofers and murderous microphones. It oozes with style, and they fully commit to the TV set bit with every aspect. Movement in Studiopolis is so kinetic as well, like you are constantly moving, like Sonic is almost in a flow state. It's so well designed, and arguably one of the most fun Sonic stages of all time, while also somehow paying tribute to the movie industry as well in remarkably detailed ways. There are still some fun gimmicks in the stage too, such as the fact that you can fall down a tube and play a mini lottery, plus run on a movie reel to get from A to B. It's so very quaint, really. Hell, even the boss is incredibly creative, because it's a robot chicken doing a weather forecast that dictates the attacks that Eggman will be using to try and get you. How do you think of this stuff, man? How? And I know I haven't mentioned music much in this essay, but the Studiopolis themes are absolute bops. T-Lopes, take a bow, dude, honestly. A lot of brilliant music has come from this guy. Studiopolis is easily my favourite classic Sonic City stage. It just has so much passion and, again, creativity put into every aspect of its development. And it also just shows just how far game development has come if we put it into a classic Sonic-shaped timeline, because you just wouldn't be able to make a stage like this back in the 90s. You could probably come somewhat close with the old technology of the Sega CD maybe, but there's so many new gimmicks here that have obviously come out of a close study of the classic Sonic formula. Studiopolis is a curated fantasy, and it's so far removed from realism that it's not even worth putting it in the conversation anymore at this point. But hey, it's fine. It's not built for realism, it's built for fun, and is filtered through the lens of entertainment, and in doing so, it absolutely becomes a loving remix of the classic aesthetics, nostalgia and performance, wrapped up in an original package. And that makes it one of the most unique city stages in the entire Sonic series. A playable city-wide soundstage where the rules of architecture follow the logic of spectacle rather than realism. We love to see it. Well, that's it for some city talk for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip through the cities of the classic era and some of the most remarkable designs in the series. Next time we'll be moving into the 3D realm and talking about some of the cool cities from the 2000s. You can probably already guess a few. Well, until next time, see ya!